What you're watching right now is footage from Niagara Square on January 28, 1991, as in the day after Super Bowl 25. Over 35,000 fans showed up to cheer on the Buffalo Bills upon their return from Tampa. Now, if you're confused by this and think you're living in an alternate dimension and are saying to yourself, wait a second, didn't the Bills lose this Super Bowl? No, you are not taking crazy pills. Yes, the Bills lost this Super Bowl, blowing a lead to the New York Giants and being unable to win it after Scott Norwood missed what would have been the game-winning kick from 47 yards out, wide right. It was a heartbreaking loss that would eventually be compounded with the Bills losing the next 3 Super Bowls, and to this day, never winning the big game. Now, this Niagara Square rally the day after the game drew mixed reception, and is a bizarre moment in history all these years later. On one hand, you can't deny the support and the love that Buffalo has for their team. When you've got 35,000 people showing up on a workday to cheer on their team, even though their team just broke their hearts in the worst possible way a few hours ago, all while there's the looming threat of terrorism and people might be afraid to gather in large public spaces in the wake of Operation Desert Storm, it just shows that Buffalo is built differently. On the other hand, yeah, I don't think you can deny the fact that it is kind of weird to be throwing a massive celebration like this when you lost the game. Maybe it'd be different if there was a 2-week gap in between the conference championship and the Super Bowl like there usually is, and you had a send-off party before the team was about to depart. But that gap was not there for the 1990 season due to the change in the schedule that had 16 games in 17 weeks for the first time ever with the addition of the bye week. So this was just a delayed send-off party where you knew the outcome. But you don't see things like this happen. The Bills throwing a huge rally and celebration for their team just hours after losing is one of those harmless but highly controversial moments where you could stand on either side of the aisle with it, and I'm not going to fight you too much about it. However, I can give you one proposed celebration by the city of Buffalo and the fans of the Bills that was a million times stupider than this that you cannot defend whatsoever. Because imagine doing a celebration like this and doing a parade after winning a game. I don't mean a playoff game. I don't even mean a regular season game that clinched a playoff spot or clinched the division or anything along those lines. I just mean a completely random, run-of-the-mill, regular season game. Imagine wanting to shut the entire city down, throw a massive parade, have the players get thrown off their schedule and their routine, and have all of this take place in the middle of the season for winning a random game in October. Well, I kid you not, as dumb and as stupid as this idea sounds, Buffalo actually wanted to do this. In 1964, after a game against the Kansas City Chiefs, the city of Buffalo wanted to honor their team with one of the dumbest ideas for a parade ever. And more than 60 years later, it deserves a deep dive today for just how insane it was. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, one of the dumbest moments in the history of the Buffalo Bills franchise. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, and in this case, the rival American Football League, with stories like this one that you may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time that the parade wagons should absolutely not have been circling. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and just how bizarre it was, we need some context to understand what was happening with the Bills beforehand in terms of how well they were playing. There were a lot of expectations for the Bills heading into the 1964 season. After a rough start to the 1963 season, where they did not win any of their first 4 games, Buffalo was able to rattle off 7 wins in their final 10 to make it to the playoffs for the first time in franchise history against all odds. But even though people expected the Bills to be good in 1964, and pick up right where they left off, I'm not sure anyone expected them to be this good. Because holy cow, the Buffalo Bills were not just the best team in the AFL, but arguably the best team in all of professional football. We were 5 weeks into the season, and the Bills were sitting pretty with a perfect 5-0 record, being the only unbeaten left in the league. The Bills had scored 165 points through 5 games, which came out to an average of 33 points per game, and had allowed just 70 points, or 14 points per game. They had the best offense and the best defense in the league from a points per game perspective, and 4 of their 5 wins had been by at least 3 possessions, just to give you an idea of how dominant they were. Their point differential of plus 95 through 5 weeks wasn't just the best point differential in the league. It more than doubled the next best total of plus 44, held by the Boston Patriots. They were in a tier of their own. Of the 22 starters on the Bills in 1964, 10 of them would go on and receive All-Star nominations, including future Hall of Fame offensive lineman Billy Shaw, quarterback Jack Kemp, and Cookie Gilchrist, the league leader in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. Bottom line, Buffalo was off to their best start in franchise history. Buffalo was looking like the best team in the AFL, and Buffalo was looking like the favorite to win the entire league. And then we get to this game right here against the Kansas City Chiefs, which came on October 18th over at Kansas City Municipal Stadium. Once again, the Bills won, taking it by a final score of 35-22, and jumping out to a 28-0 lead at one point in the third quarter before the Chiefs gave them a bit of a scare. There wasn't really any significance about this game in particular. Kansas City was 5-7-2 the year before, so it's not like they knocked off the reigning champ. The Chiefs didn't win a single game against the Bills in 1963, so it's not like this was a situation like the one involving the Bills finally beating the Dolphins in Week 1 of the 1980 season and getting that monkey off of their back. Kansas City entered this game at 2-2, so they were pretty average thus far. It's not like this was a battle of the best team against the best team. This was just another game against an opponent that Buffalo was favored to beat that the Bills ended up beating, thanks to quarterback Jack Kemp throwing 3 touchdowns, and thanks to the Bills' defensive line picking up 6 sacks, getting to Len Dawson 2 times and Eddie Wilson 4 times. Buffalo deserved the win, and they got the win. And even though the Chiefs made it interesting and made it a 1-score game entering the fourth quarter, Buffalo never trailed at any point, getting in front early on and never looking back. And when the Bills got back from Kansas City and arrived into the airport in Buffalo, there were over 5,000 fans who greeted them. These fans braved the rain and the somewhat cold weather and stayed up on a work night just to see their team land and to cheer them on for a hard-fought win. And you know what? Good for the fans. For that many fans to brave the weather and cheer on their team that late in the night after a regular season game in October is impressive. We've seen fans cheer on their team in the airport before after various games, and Bills fans have done that a lot over the years after their team clinched a playoff spot. So I've got no problem with this so far. The plane lands, you're out there cheering, and that's that. Fine with me. And somewhat of a non-story, especially because airport visits and celebrations were surprisingly frequent back in the 1960s and the 1970s. And if that's where the story ends, then that's not much of a story. But oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Because this is the part where it gets pretty dumb. Because after the Bills won this game they've been watching against the Chiefs, and after the Bills got to 6-0, not even at the halfway point of the season, the city of Buffalo and the fans had an idea. What if we throw the Bills a parade? What if the Bills do a gala parade right now, prior to their next game? What if we organize a parade for the Bills where every player is on top of a limo and they get to drive around the city and be lauded and cheered on? Now, when you think of times that a parade is thrown for a football team, it's usually after winning the Super Bowl, where the season is over and there are no more responsibilities for the players or the coaching staff. You're not asking the team to be involved in a parade for winning a singular game in Week 6. Because what was insane about planning a parade like this after the Chiefs game right here is that the season was not even close to done. Buffalo was playing lights out, but they had not clinched a playoff spot, nor were they remotely close to clinching one. Back in 1964, you had to win your division in order to make it to the playoffs. It was first place or bust. And by this point, while the Bills were in first place in the East with a 6-0 record, the New York Jets had only lost once, and the Boston Patriots had also only lost once. The East was way better than the West that year. In fact, the Patriots were sitting at 4-1-1, and the Bills still had to play the Patriots twice. So if the Patriots won out, even if the Bills won every other game, the Patriots would overtake the Bills and win the division. So there was still a very realistic chance that the Bills wound up missing the playoffs. This isn't like the Bills had a 4-game lead on the division, and even though there was still plenty of time left in the season, it would take a massive choke job to blow it. The Bills were off to a great start, but they had accomplished absolutely nothing. The division was still up for grabs, and the win against the Chiefs was just your average, run-of-the-mill win that meant nothing from a historic standpoint for the team or for any of the players. And when head coach Lou Sabin heard the news about Buffalo wanting to throw a freaking parade for their team, you can imagine how he felt. You're kidding me, right? You want us to participate in and be the stars of a parade for doing our jobs and existing? Besides the fact that this would get to the heads of the players and make them a bit cocky, this would also take away from preparation for a huge game against the Jets, who again had only lost once this season and were still on the Bills' tails for the division hunt. A Super Bowl parade is a responsibility for a team, but by that point, the season is over, and there's nothing left to prepare for. There's no opponent that you're watching film on. There's no practice time that you need to do to stay in shape, and there's nothing of that matter. Everything is done. It's time to celebrate. But for a parade in the middle of the season, just a couple of days before the Jets game, the Bills would have had to miss a day of practice, miss a day of film watching, and miss a day of game planning just to partake in this endeavor, which could significantly impact and alter how prepared they are for the game. So Lou Sabin, unsurprisingly, nixed the proposal, and in no uncertain terms, thought that the city of Buffalo and its backers were kind of crazy. There's support, and then there's this borderline delusion. Sabin had nothing but praise for Buffalo's fans afterwards, as later on in the month, he said, seriously, Buffalo fans have been faithful. They stuck with the club even when nothing was going right, and they're so rabid, they always want to win. But even this was a bridge too far. As Sabin said on the parade and why it wasn't going to happen, our players might start thinking the season's over and the race won. And we're coming up to our toughest game yet against the Jets. And yeah, that's a pretty good reason as to why you shouldn't throw a parade in the middle of the season. If the Jacksonville Jaguars somehow start the 2025 season off with a 7-0 record, I'll be on cloud 9, and I will do unspeakable things. But if the number 7 seed in the AFC after 7 weeks is 5-2, and the Houston Texans are our next opponent, and they enter the game with a 6-1 record, ain't no way I'm throwing a parade and celebrating like we just won the Super Bowl, if you know what I mean. Long story short, the parade wasn't happening. If you want to celebrate us, go ahead and celebrate us. But we've still got a job to do, and we will not be partaking in this, because this would just be insane. The bad news was that Buffalo could not throw a parade. The parade did not happen. The good news was that they would eventually get their moment to celebrate, this time for real, as the Bills continue their dominant play, finishing the season 12-2 and advancing to the championship for the first time in franchise history, thanks to the number 1 offense and the number 1 defense in the league. In the AFL Championship, the Bills won, taking down the San Diego Chargers at the Rock Pile by a final score of 20-7 to win their first AFL title in franchise history. So it all worked out for this team right here, as they continued to play well. And after December 26th, the season was over and the race was won. A great Christmas gift to the city of Buffalo. But as the words of the wise to any cities and fan groups and whatnot, do not hold a parade for a team or attempt to hold a parade for a team after one regular season game. It just looks stupid. If the Philadelphia Eagles held a parade for their team this past season after beating the Jacksonville Jaguars, as in a team they were expected to beat, and a game that did not even come close to clinching a playoff spot for them, you'd look at the city of brotherly love like they had 5 heads and may have been showing a little too much love. If you want to throw a parade to honor your team, just wait until the season's over. Don't do it while they're in the middle of their job and haven't clinched anything yet. Because while no one likes a party pooper, in 1964, Lou Sabin had every reason to be the bearer of Buffalo's bad news. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.